I was there when Sethrak sacrificed herself to stop Mithrax. If not for her, the world would have fallen to chaos. I lived here too once, long ago, before Korthek betrayed our people for power and madness. In those days, Korthek and I led all Sethrak in our worship of Sethralis. We will keep Mithrax's prison sealed, and I will unite our people.
Greetings and welcome to another Sethrak lore video. Today I will be discussing the curious longevity of the Sethrak race. If you'd like to know more about the Sethrak, you can watch my latest video about them here. Let's begin! According to dialogue by Vorik, he was present when Sethrak sacrificed herself to stop Mithrax. The battle took place approximately 16,000 years ago. This was during the time known only as the Troll and Aegir War. Given that Vorik is still alive and well to this very day, one could easily assume that their lifespans were extended by Sethrak herself. Despite the gift of longevity, there is very little dialogue nor evidence that tells us when the first Sethrak appeared. We know there are other several races that were around long before, many of which were of either titanic origin, minions of the old gods, or primordial forms by Azeroth herself. When Keeper Freya started to dabble in the Emerald Dream, either by bringing about its creation herself or merely stumbling upon it, we know that a handful of wild gods started to emerge from the dream. According to Bran Bronzebeard, he notes that there are many races that may be direct descendants of the wild gods. He notes there may be a potential link between the Furbolgs and that of Ursok, Harpies in relation to Aviana, and the Quillboars in relation to I can't say his name. And the Quillboars in relation to Agma Magan. By following the current trend, it is highly probable that the Sethrak were created by Sethrak herself. She plays a vital role in the Sethrak society, as evident by what occurred after she died. The Sethrak were flung into complete despair and disarray, while the Sethrak, like Korthek, started to expand his more dominative traits and coaxed a handful of the race to share in his ideals of conquest. With the return of their loa, we can only hope that they successfully managed to steer most of the Sethrak race back from their violent impulses, and drive them towards back to their peaceful nature they once all upheld together. While the exact lifespan of the Sethrak race is unknown, we do know that Vorik, Korthek, and potentially Solthius were at the very least around as far back as 16,000 years ago. Given that Korthek and Vorik led the Sethrak race together, one could easily assume, like before, that they were given life extensions by Sethrak herself. However, there is a single faithless you can encounter around the Temple of Sethrak, who has a curious line of dialogue when slain.
Sethralis! I'd forgotten your voice!
It is unknown if the Sethrak in question is speaking metaphorically or literally. If we go with the latter, then that explains that the Sethrak, all of them, are extremely long-lived. The only way for this Sethrak to have forgotten her voice is if he was still around before she died. If this is true, then the most curious factor we can take away from all of this is the fact that we have not seen any Sethrak show signs of slowing down due to old age. What I am about to state could be due to cut time restraints or lack of proper cultural work for the Sethrak when they were written, but it is interesting to note that there are no signs of Sethrak burial sites or skeletal remains for us to look at. Except for Emily, who just has a scroll sitting on a table. That's the most burial site they have. While we don't know how Sethrak begins its life, we can dabble in a few guesses. A Sethrak begins its life from within one of the many hatcheries in the temple. These areas would be highly protected and considered sacred. While the egg develops, the very waters that the egg resides within provide nutrients and keeps it warm. It could be that a lot of Sethrak do not personally raise their young and instead have them all hatched together within a nest, and are left to be trained by the temple's scholars and teachers. As the Sethrak grows up, they are taught the many aspects of their society, alongside with a potential path for them to pursue in life of their own choosing. Given the lack of any Sethrak hatchlings, again possibly due to time restraints or lack of proper cultural development for them, it is plausible that a Sethrak couple only lay a clutch in their lifespan once, but that is only a theory. A lot of people are under the belief that the Sethrak do not harbour much underground presence as opposed to the surface. If one were to look around the temple dungeon, if you look into the far distant skybox, you can see that the Sethrak society is much larger than what it appears to be. The first skybox you can encounter is right at the entrance. Here we see a massive chasm. There are signs of hanging decor in the distance alongside a bridge with an obvious campfire not far from that as well. If you look even closely at the far bottom, you can see more decor along with a long pathway filled with homes for the Sethrak to live in. The second skybox can be encountered as you work your way through the dungeon. This one shows a lot more massive entryways alongside Sethrak spires that are often dotted around the region outside the temple. The third skybox is encountered as you cross the bridge into the bazaar. Here we see more Sethrak built structures alongside banners and some torches. The final skybox can be seen at the very last section of the dungeon. This by far is the most stunning skybox, as we can see the Sethrak underground span for miles on end. If you look closely, we can see more signs of small campfires, homes, but most importantly, a large Sethrak bridge leading into paths unknown. This further drives home my potential speculation that the Sethrak once came into conflict with the Nerubian Empire at some point in time. Of course, there are several other races that dwell underground, but the Nerubians tend to be the most largest empire that we know of, aside from the Sethrak themselves. One last note on this topic to go over is that there are some who believe the Sethrak would not traverse that far to the Isles of Dawn as of the War Within. However, we can confirm both by Castric's dialogue and encountering two Drogbar who directly came from the Zaralek Caverns all the way from the Dragon Isles, it is absurdly clear that the underground traversal for the Sethrak is not difficult at all. This last section of the video will go over a lot of unsolved mysteries that have yet to be confirmed or were simply forgotten about when the Sethrak were written to be such massive ancient connections to the world and its world building. To start off, what were the Sethrak's relation in regards to the Mogu Empire and by extension the Thunder King? Given Leishan's ancient pact with the Zandalari, we can assume that they once sought out the Sethrak to draft them into their armies to conquer not only Azeroth but soon Uldum itself from the Tol'vir. This is during a time where the land of Vol'dun might have already started to show signs of withering away into sands after Sethrak's death. Vorik, Solthius and Korthek likely ended up in an argument whether or not to join forces with the Mogu and the Zandalari. Vorik and Solthius likely voted against throwing their people against the Tol'vir and instead opted to focus on keeping their people safe. Korthek, known as the more militant keeper, could have started to show signs at this time of the hunger for war and wanted to jump at the opportunity. However, he was outvoted and the Sethrak denied both Mogu and the Zandalari their forces. It leads one to ask, why not simply exterminate the Sethrak right there and then for refusal, or better yet, enslave them for their own purposes? Perhaps Leishan and the Zandalari deemed it an already fitting punishment that their land is already left to wither away and their society would soon crumble inwards without their lord's guidance. This might also explain why the Zandalari use Vol'dun as basically a dumping ground for their exiles and not trying to mend any kind of relationship with the Sethrak ever since. An unresolved plot thread that has yet to be given any kind of resolution since Battle for Azeroth is the lack of a Sethrak upon the Zul'Chanti Council, newly formed by Queen Talanji. It is rather bizarre that Talanji throughout the whole expansion heavily desires to unify Zandalar, which she partially succeeds by adding a Tatolan among her council, yet strangely excludes a Vulpera and a Sethrak to help bring proper unification to Zandalar at all. One leeway you could give is that the Vulpera are already part of the Horde Council, yet that still leaves the Sethrak to be, included in the council. If you've reached the end of the video, then I wish to give you a big thank you for watching. This has been my second Sethrak video. Hopefully it's a little bit of a light improvement over my first one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cephalus watch over you.